It's ELISON Tech. Let's teach you programming for mobile devices. Welcome, everyone, to this explainer. Today, we're going to demystify the sometimes complex but absolutely rewarding world of mobile app development. It's going to be a really fun ride.
Whether you're dreaming of building the next viral gaming sensation, some life-changing productivity tool, or even a massive enterprise platform, we've got you covered. We're going to break down the exact paths you can take to get your big ideas right into the hands and onto the screens of users all over the globe. So, let's get into it.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll kick things off with a welcome to mobile programming, peek inside the Android OS, explore native Android development, introduce the Flutter framework, look at actually building apps with Flutter, and finally, wrap things up.
All right, part 1. Welcome to mobile programming, understanding the foundation. To start off, we really need to grasp the platform that literally powers billions of devices globally. Before we write a single line of code, we have to recognize what makes Android so incredibly powerful. Originally a small startup, and now championed by Google, Android is actually built on a Linux kernel. This open-source approach is a real game-changer. It offers a unified canvas, which means you can build apps that run flawlessly across thousands of different hardware setups. Pretty wild, right?
Moving right along to part 2, inside the Android OS, building from the ground up. If you want to truly master mobile, you've got to know how the software stack is actually structured inside your phone.
So think of Android as a bottom-up structure. It's kind of like a multi-story building. Down in the basement, at the very base, is the Linux kernel. That's your ultimate traffic cop for hardware control and memory. Right above that, the Android runtime, or RAT, acts as a translator, compiling your code so the phone actually gets what you're trying to do. Head up a bit further and you hit the application framework, which provides all those reusable building blocks, like location services. And finally, sitting in the penthouse at the very top are the actual apps you use every single day.
And that brings us to part 3, native Android development, the traditional path. To interact with all those underlying layers natively, well, we need the right tools.
Setting up your environment essentially builds your personal command center. You're going to start by grabbing the Java JDK and JRE, then install the official IDE, Android Studio. Once you create an empty activity project, you'll fire up an Android virtual device. And this is super cool. It literally emulates a real smartphone right there on your computer screen. Android Studio is basically your ultimate gateway into the native ecosystem. Instead of you having to manually piece together all these different SDKs and dev tools, this integrated powerhouse, which is based on IntelliJ IDEA, by the way, does all the heavy lifting for you during installation.
Now, once you're inside, you're going to spend a lot of time building what are called activities. Think of an activity as just a single screen that your user interacts with. For example, in an email app, one activity displays your inbox, while a totally separate activity handles composing a new message. All of these, along with background services, are tied together by a single manifest file that dictates the whole shebang.
And the final output of that setup is a huge milestone, your very first Hello World application running on the emulator. Seeing that simple text pop up, it proves your dev environment is actively communicating with that deep Android software stack we just talked about. It's a great feeling. But here's the great dilemma, right? If you build natively for Android using Java or Kotlin, you're kind of locked in. If you suddenly decide you want an iOS version for Apple users, you have to start completely from scratch using Swift or Objective-C. I mean, that's 2 massive frameworks, writing everything twice, and basically double the development time. This persistent headache is exactly what paved the way for cross-platform solutions. Which perfectly tees up part 4, the Flutter framework, the cross-platform solution. Let's see how this incredible alternative completely changes the game.
Early cross-platform tools relied on these simple HTML wrappers, and honestly, they often felt pretty sluggish and clunky. But Flutter is different. Using Google's Dart language, it completely bypasses those native UI components and literally paints its pixels directly onto the operating system's canvas. This gives you absolute blistering native speed alongside massive cross-platform reach.
The cool thing is, Flutter treats absolutely everything as a widget. You piece together fluid user interfaces just like you're snapping together building blocks. And because of its reactive programming, if any data changes, Flutter instantly calculates the difference and redraws only what's necessary. It's an incredibly fast cycle that guarantees your app is going to look gorgeous on both Android and iPhone.
Now, you might be wondering, wait, do I lose access to native hardware like the camera or the battery? Not at all. Flutter uses a simple message channel to talk directly to the native host.
Your Dart code basically acts as a client sending a request, and the native iOS or Android host invokes its specific platform SDKs to execute the job perfectly. Best of both worlds, really.
All right, part 5, building apps with Flutter, looking at real-world results. Let's see what happens when Dart and Flutter's widget catalog actually come together.
As you'll see, whether you're building a vibrant, scrollable product listing or a highly interactive expense calculator, Flutter totally delivers. It proves that you absolutely do not have to sacrifice visual fidelity, complex animations, or snappy responsiveness when you choose a single code base route.
And finally, part 6, wrapping up the developer's choice. We've explored the deep roots of the Android OS and the lightning-fast workflow of Flutter, bringing us to a bit of a crossroads.
So whether you crave the low-level, bare-metal control of Android Studio or the rapid cross-platform efficiency of Flutter, the power is completely in your hands. You know the architecture now. You know the tools. The only question left is, what are you going to build first?
Goodbye and welcome for our next video. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and other social medias at ELISON Tech.